Hey, Middle Isle team. Today I'm going to be doing another guide documentation video, and this one is about how to set up our current system of modular wall pieces and actually use it to create the environment. Now, this is the first blockout environment that we did as a prototype from a grid sketch that Michael and I developed. And today I'm going to be blocking out a second prototype that we drew based off of some different desires for how we want the environment to work and how we want the story throughout the environment to progress, and also based on some practical stuff. The main one is that this specific environment is way too big. You can see it takes forever to get anywhere, and the fact of the scale of everything means that here's the octagon right here, right? There's no way that anyone can live in this building, even someone really rich, like the character whose house we want this to be. So it's way too huge, and so we scaled it down and adjusted some of the geometry, adjusted some of the architecture, and we're gonna do a second version of this similar layout, and I'm going to show you exactly how to use the wall pieces, how to block out the layout while I'm at it. So to begin with, I'm going to turn ProGrids on, and I'm going to just kind of come over here and get started with some of our walls. So what I'm doing is, first, before doing this, I sketched out what the environment is going to look like on the grid. It's really important that you do this. Here, I'll show you. This is the original. This is the new one. And it's really important that you sketch it out on a grid like this. We provided a Photoshop document with this grid in the Google Drive. And it's really important that you sketch it out on a grid like this, otherwise you're going to kind of get imprecise, and then suddenly none of your walls are actually going to line up with each other, because the walls line up in a very precise way. And if you're not exact constructing the environment the whole way through, you're going to get pieces that are a little bit off, don't quite connect, have a tiny little gap that none of the pieces fill. You get that problem in other ways too, mainly by not following the rules I'm about to outline and demonstrate for you, but that's the main one. So no matter what, you need to sketch out your environment on this grid like this. Now this is version 2, and I'm going to keep this over on my second monitor while I'm working on sketching things out, and I'm going to start with the octagon. So the way that the pieces work is there are cardinal and ordinal tiles. And to begin, oh yes, and also I'm going to want to, you can see these are all, the entire environment is encompassed by these prefabs, and then I put these prefabs down into our prefab section, and it lets us easily take the block out and put it into other scenes. Just dump it right in there, and you can do that. It's super fast, it's super easy, it doesn't involve merging scenes or anything like that. So first of all, I'm going to make a new prefab, just a new empty game object. I'm going to call it wall. I'm going to call it walls full 3. And I'm going to make another one, and I'm going to call it floor 3. Just going off of the naming convention that I set up here. And I'm going to have these empty objects be the, and I'm also going to zero these out. Not quite sure why they start out with transforms, but that messes everything with ProGrids up, so we want to make sure not to do that. So we've got all of these zeroed out. They're all scaled to 1. And these are going to be the parents for all of our objects. And we're going to be, there's going to be a whole nest of parents underneath those, which is just the nature of working with lots and lots of little tiny pieces. But I'm gonna kind of go over briefly how we deal with those too. So let's get started. And I always want to start with the walls first because the floors don't quite line up to the grid how you think they would, and it's kind of difficult to get the hang of how you want to do the floors. So I always like to start out with the walls because also the walls are more complicated and it's more important to get those right first time around. Sorry, just taking a bit of water there. This is going to be a bit of a longer one. So I'm going to grab our wall cardinal base, which is basically this piece right here, one of these. Here, actually close that down. And when I drag it in here, first thing I want to do is make sure that it's oriented properly. I'm using ProGrid so it snaps to the grid, and then I'm also going to press this little button right here to make sure all of its transforms are snapped right. Also, how is it's -3? Yeah, so I'm just gonna bring it up here, right? Actually, I'm not quite sure about that. Here, there's a better way to do this. Yeah. Yeah, this isn't really important, just making sure that everything is cohesive. That's probably like that because I moved one of the transforms. So we've got this wall cardinal base. It starts out up here. I'm going to parent it to our walls full down there. And the other thing I want to do before... Oh, yeah. Let's... The other thing I want to do before anything else is I want to add its collider. So I'm going to use a mesh collider. And I'm going to call it convex. And that'll just make it super easy to see everything that's going on with that. Actually, I believe I could use a box collider and it would get the same effect with this particular one. But for most of the others, I try and use mesh collider because the box collider is not going to work for most of them. Like any of the ordinal pieces, the more complicated or the smaller pieces, basically, it's not going to work. So this is our cardinal wall piece, and it's going to be the basis for our octagon. And I'm going to bring this in here. This is going to be this piece, and basically one of these is the center wall for one square. And then I'm going to just duplicate that, move it over here, and it's going to have a little gap. It will line up, but you never want to do that. You always want that gap in between the wall base pieces because that's where we put our spacers. And the spacers are really important for a couple of reasons. They allow us to have lots of different types of angles within the walls without dealing with lots and lots of different wall pieces. Like these are all of the walls we need for this entire construction, and some of these are redundant and defunct, and we're not using them anymore. So it's actually even fewer than this. So the spacers let us get really complex constructions with not very many pieces. And the other reason is that the spacers are what we are eventually going to use to transition between different types of walls. So we're going to have different walls that are different meshes, different constructions, and that have and that look different. And the spacers are going to be even transitions between those two types of walls. So we're going to have quite a few more spacers eventually than we do our wall pieces. But it means that we're not going to have to model in a bunch of different transitions. We basically only get one transition per spacer per wall transition. And we're only probably going to have two different types of walls. So it won't be that much work in the long run compared to the other way. So I'm going to drag a spacer in here. It's going to wind up way over there for whatever reason. I'm going to hit the thing, bring it over here, and the spacer lines up perfectly like that. I'm going to add its component. Spacer can also have a box collider. Well, actually, no, it can't, because if I want to rotate it 45 degrees, which sometimes I will, the box collider will mess up. So instead, I'm going to give it a mesh collider, call it convex. And the spacer I also want parented under walls. Not parented under the wall cardinal, just parented under walls. So now I've got what is basically this full length right here. Because it's two wall pieces and they're joined by a spacer. So what I want to do next is I want to start filling out the rest of the octagon. So next piece I'm going to have is an L spacer. The L spacer isn't actually shaped like an L, but I called it that because there's no other letter that really works, so I called it that and called the V spacer a V spacer when really it's more of an L spacer. You'll get used to it. I'm going to do the same stuff, and you only have to do the collider once because as soon as I'm done kind of getting all of these different pieces in here that I need, I'm going to start copy-pasting them, and they will have all of the same stuff. Eventually, when we get our full set of geometry in, we are going to have prefabs that already have colliders on them, but for the purposes of blocking out with these wall pieces that aren't UV'd, that don't really have much going for them other than we can use them to gray box, this is what we're doing, and it'll work perfectly fine for that. And so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to grab all of these, and I'm going to duplicate all of them. Bring them over here. And then I'm going to grab these, I'm going to parent them under that spacer right there. And what this is going to let me do is this is going to let me save a lot of time. So I'm going to grab the spacer, and it lets me grab everything. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And then I'm going to move it to the precise position where it's going to need to be to complete the octagon. And then let's just do that a couple more times, right? Let's put it at 180. And I'm going to put it over here. I think it actually should go. It's hard to tell at first, so you're going to have to eyeball it, and sometimes you're going to miss. But I'm going to duplicate it again. You can always change stuff. And put it at 270. So now we've got rough blocking for our octagon. It's not going to be perfect quite yet. And now I'm going to introduce you to the ordinal pieces. So the ordinal pieces make up the straight, or the straight up and down on our diagonal grid here. And they are bigger because they have to take up a full diagonal rather than a square side. And this is why you can't swap cardinal and ordinal. One is one, the other is the other. You never want to be rotating a wall piece on a 45 degree. You always want it rotating on a 90 degree. So I'm going to grab the wall ordinal base and bring it in here. This one also wants a mesh collider. Here, I'll actually show you what happens when I put a box collider on it. That. You don't want that. So, anything that's going to be not cardinal wants a mesh collider. And that means basically everything except for the wall cardinal base. So I'm going to put a mesh collider on it, snap it, it's going to bring down, and you can see he matches up just like that. And now I can see that I've actually messed up a little bit. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to just reorient everything to get it to where it should be based off the rules that I've just outlined. Now I'm going to duplicate my spacer that is not parented. And I'm going to bring it in here. And I'm going to rotate him 45 degrees. And you can see he fits right in between the ordinal tiles also. And then I'm going to duplicate my L spacer that's not parented. And I'm bring him over here. And I'm going to rotate him 45 degrees as well. And now we've got just about half of our octagon. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. Where, oh here, let me bring the ordinal base down here. I'm going to do the same thing I did before, where I'm going to duplicate all three of these guys. And then I'm going to parent these ones to the spacer. And then I'm just going to deal with the spacer for now. And let's rotate him to 135. Like that. And you can see the octagon is starting to come together. And now I can grab this one, bring him here, grab this one, bring him here. And you can see how fast this system ends up being eventually, once you get the hang of everything. I like to use negatives when I'm dealing with the ordinal rotations, because I just don't have them memorized. I'm gonna eventually put together a table that I'm probably gonna put on this document, along with like north, south, east, and west, all that. But for now, let's duplicate him. Let's rotate him to -45, and let's put him here. There we go. And so now we've got our full octagon. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to maybe take a look at, well, let's make another empty object. I'm going to call it octagon. And I'm going to bring this under walls full 3, and then I'm going to parent everything underneath octagon. And then I can close that down, and this is going to be really important eventually for just organizing your whole model. I didn't do enough organization on this one, and now it looks like this. So this is not ideal. We don't want to do that. We want to keep everything nice and clean. Oh, shoot, hang on. Before I parented that, which was unwise, I want to zero out these transformations, which for some reason, I don't know Unity editor very well, so I couldn't tell you why I get fucking transforms every time I create an empty object, but I do, and it's a pain in the ass, and you gotta zero out every time. There's probably a fix out there that I just haven't read about. And you can see that the parented objects are highlighted in blue, and the regular objects are highlighted in orange. So whenever you know something's not a parent, you can just grab it and say I want to, well, say, let's just continue on. Say I want to start building out here. What I'm going to do now is, oh, this is going to take a little fiddling. Well, that's pretty cool. Okay, I can show you some fiddling now. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to keep working within my parented objects. So I've got this here. I'm going to delete it. I don't need that. Additionally, I don't need this guy. And instead, I'm going to work within the octagon to get this shape that I want right here. And this shape is a little bit tricky because it involves one of those concave 45-degree angles, acute 45-degree angles, excuse me. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. So what I want to do for this one is I want to find, this is an ordinal wall piece, right? So what I want to find is a cardinal hybrid single, no, I want to find an ordinal hybrid single wall piece. Bring it in here. Looks like I need to rotate him 90, negative 90. And then snap him there, no. Oh yeah, and then let's also transform along negative x and negative z 90. Whoops. Yeah, orientation's hard. It's no way around it. Just basically keep experimenting until you got it in the orientation you want. So I ended up rotating that along negative x and changing nothing else, and I'm gonna put that guy right there. And the ordinal hybrid single is, it's got one of these pieces that comes out here, and it's also got an extension that extends into a spacer. And what those pieces are for right there is connecting to another hybrid wall piece, say, for example, a cardinal edge piece, like this one. So I'm going to bring him in here. Oh, let's not forget also, I want to add my mesh collider to this guy, and bring him into the octagon, because he is a part of the octagon. And I'm going to bring this guy in here, and I'm going to add a mesh collider to him, because even though he's a cardinal piece, he's got this little extra doodads. So now, I'm going to rotate him 90, negative 90, there we go. Snap him to the grid, let's focus, bring him up and over, and you can see that he lines up just like that. And, oh, well, not precisely. There's still some kinks to be worked out with these systems. You can see that there's a little bit of overlap. We do not want that in the final version. So, but this is the only real way to get this working, so that we can use our spacers properly, we can use our hubs properly, and we don't get any awkward overlapping on these tight corners. And there's only going to be a few of these in the level. So from right here, we've got spacers on all these. These are connected up good. From right here, we're just going to some copy and paste from, say, here. I'll duplicate this guy. I'll bring him outside of the octagon into here. And I'll bring him around here and rotate him 90. And he lines up just like that. And then, say, also copy this guy. Bring him out of the octagon. Or bring him out of the octagon. Same with this guy. Let's bring him up here. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring him over here, rotate him 90, and he should snap just like that. And so this is 1, 2 wall pieces. Oh. Yeah. Oh, I did that wrong. Because you can see, I got confused between ordinal and cardinal. That is one of the dangers of working like this, because you can see this needed to actually come out like this. I brought it out like this. So in this case, when I make a mistake like this, there's usually a fun, easy way to fix it. First of all, I'm going to grab the offending components, and I'm going to move them out here. I'm going to fix it by, say, grabbing this and this, duplicating them, bringing them outside of that specific spacer group, and moving them down here. They just match up just like that. And then what I can actually do is, oh no, I can't, because these need to be replaced. This needs to be an edge piece, and this needs to be a hybrid piece. So I'm going to just end up deleting these. It's no big deal. And we don't need these guys either. And I'm always keeping an eye on the hierarchy, just to make sure I'm keeping things clean. So what we want is, oh, I messed up again. See, this is what goes on with this. It's like, it's endless fiddling, and you're not going to get it right every time. What mistake I made this time was, these are 2 walls wide. They're supposed to be 3 walls wide. This is why I draw the grid. It's because if I make those mistakes, I can always be checking them against my work. So let's really quickly fix that. So I'm going to grab this piece, bring it out here. Say this piece, bring it out here. And I need 1 more wall, so I'm going to duplicate him, bring him out here, and these walls are next to each other. They're not supposed to be next to each other, so I need to grab this and this, bring them out 1 more time. This guy, bring him over here, duplicate this guy, and put him right there. Just like that. And now I've got a proper spacer. So what I can do is I can just delete all of these guys This one's gonna be a little bit trickier. I'm gonna move these guys away because I want to keep them because I'm gonna want to use them in the future. Same with this guy. Move him outside of the octagon, move him away because I'll probably want to keep him in the future. But then for the rest of them, grab this guy, and it's the same deal. We duplicate, we move him over here, 180, snap him up all nice, move this one over here. I thought that shape was a little small. Whoops. Yeah, see, you gotta make sure you grab everything. Duplicate him here, 270. Put him right there. And duplicate him again, back to 0 this time. And I'll put him right there. Now we got the proper shape, and that's looking a lot more like an octagon. So you always want to keep an eye on your work. Make sure you are getting everything in its correct place accurately. Now it's time to make that shape again and make it work better. So, I've got my right orientation, and it looks like what I'm going to need to do is delete these two and replace them with a cardinal hybrid single right there. You snap him and you move him and you do a -1 transform on him and you add his collider. And you just want to always make sure you add the collider every time you bring a piece in that you haven't used before. And he's going in the octagon. And then I'm going to grab an ordinal ordinal edge. Bring him in here. And again, he is going to go in the walls, but not in the octagon, because he's not in the octagon. We can close the octagon back up for the time being. And add his collider. And in case you're curious, I'm clicking convex because it makes the collider calculations in the engine a lot easier when the game is actually running, and it's perfectly fine for all of the walls to be convex. The only one it's not fine for are the door pieces, which we will go over in a moment. Move them over here, and let's rotate 90 degrees and scale by -1. Rotate by -90 degrees. Rotate by 0. And I guess that works. There we go. Now we've got a cardinal wall piece. Again, let's see if, yeah, there's a little bit of overlap there that I am not a fan of. It would be more clear if I had textures on these guys, but I don't, so. Yeah, again, not perfect, but the system works for now. So now I've got the correct arrangement. This is an ordinal piece. And what I'm gonna do next is basically the same shit. I'm gonna grab, say, one of these and one of these, duplicate them, move them outside of the octagon, and move them over here, and I've got one spacer and then another ordinal wall piece that I'm gonna snap right there. And then we can just check out what needs to happen next. So, looks like I need a V piece, which remember is basically an L piece, but it's named different because we couldn't find a correct name for what is right now the L piece. Put the V piece right there. Remember, we're working in ordinal, so I need to rotate him by, say, 45, -45, 135, -135. Sometimes you need to go through all 4 of them. I'm not good at math. right there. He's also getting a mesh collider. And then I'm just gonna duplicate this guy, rotate him by 0, bring him over there. Perfect. Why is he 0.0001? That is curious. But not curious enough to investigate right now while I'm making this video. Now, I'm going to, now I'm going to move these over here because I can see what I want to do next. So that's that piece and that corner and that piece. Now I want to transition into a little Y piece right there with another ordinal piece right there, and it's going to go into some cardinal pieces. So I'm going to grab a Y piece. Y pieces are some of the most frustrating ones to orient. You got to go through like all of the different transforms a lot of the time to get them in their precise orientation. Oops, I turned that off. Bam. And let us go through it. I believe it should be something like 135? Negative 135. There we go. So that's going to be our proper orientation. And then I'm going to duplicate this guy, put him here. And I'm going to grab these guys, move them over here. I'm going to replace this guy. Well, no, I'm just going to move him away. Replace this guy with one of these. Put him right there. Back to 0. 180 should work. Duplicate this guy and bring him over here and rotate him by 90. And then just make sure that everyone snaps together. That. And then I knew I'd have a use for this guy over here. Gonna bring this guy over here. 90, 135. There we go. Duplicate him, bring him over there. So now we got 1 unit, and he's parallel with that. Now I'm going to need another bit of, excuse me, just another sip of coffee. Now I'm going to need some more walling. And looking at that again, I'm not sure if I want to... Yeah, I'll do it. I'll see how it's done. And we've got a couple of different ways to do a component like this. There are some options, but I'm going to try doing the same kind of thing that we did over here. So, let's try orienting this guy by -1x. That didn't work. Oh, whoops. 1, not 0. 90. -45. There we go. And then I'm going to take... I need the opposite. So I should have saved those, actually. I shouldn't have... Oh, and I need to keep in mind that I want to bring these in here. And keep these above the octagon piece. So, I'm going to grab an ordinal hybrid single, put him right there. Try rotating by 90, and then by -1, 0, 180. Yeah, that's good. That's lining up really well. I'm gonna add its mesh well, no. I'm gonna add its mesh collider. Just like that. Yeah, those line up well. And then I'm going to grab, excuse me, a cardinal edge piece. -1. No. Just like that. And then I've got a mesh collider on here, like that. And again, not quite working, but it's for future me to figure out. And then you might notice that I've got some hard edges here. There are two different ways to deal with that. First of all, I'm going to deal with the door that's going to go right here. Now this is a cardinal door, which means that it's going to take up a one wall and one spacer. So I actually can get rid of this. And then I'm going to search for door cardinal. Bring him in here. Snap him to the grid. And then just move him on along here. And you can see he lines up perfectly with everything. I do want a collider on it, and I do want it to be a mesh collider, but I do not want to hit convex, because if I hit convex, our character won't be able to walk through here. So I just need to leave it mesh collider. It's gonna be just one of a few that exist. And the ordinal doors are the same, except for they don't take up a spacer, because ordinal walls are a lot bigger. Now, how about these guys? For these, I want just one of these end pieces. End cap, right here. Bring him here. Snap him to the grid. I'm going to add just a mesh collider convex on it. And I'm going to rotate this one to 45. Yeah, that's perfect, right? Yeah, and that just caps off the walls so that they're not so sharp and gross. I'm going to duplicate him right here. Oh, and we want to make sure that all of these guys wind up in the thing. And that door piece winds up inside the octagon. Again, keeping it clean. These guys need to come in here too. What are they thinking? Duplicate that. Bring him over here. Tell him to rotate by 45. Negative 45. There. And does this guy want... No, he does not want a spacer before he snaps on. He is the spacer. Just an end spacer. There. So that's cleaning stuff up a little bit. And now we've taken care of the entirety of this whole section right here. I'm going to add this piece. And then I'm going to lump that in another empty game object and call it, like, say, westernmost wing. I have got some really delicious biscotti and some excellent coffee, and it makes me very happy, and I'm taking bites and sips while I'm doing this tutorial. And you can see once you've got most of these pieces in here, you're just kind of duplicating and moving and duplicating and moving. Although those... Are you still in the octagon? No. They just wound up on the other side. Yeah. Oh, and then actually, this isn't going to be one of those. This is going to be a... How am I going to do this one? Let's do it the same way. So this is going to be one of these guys. I'm going to duplicate. Bring him outside of the octagon. Whoops. Bring him over here. Call him 1 and rotate him by 90 degrees. Negative 90 degrees. Put him right there. Ah, not right there. It's going to be another wall right here, so put him right there. And then I've got that piece. Duplicate him. Going down here. Close off the octagon again. Move him around here. 1. And by -90. Yes. And right like that. There we go. And then this guy is going down here, and we want to create a new empty game object. Westernmost wing. And zero it out. Put it under, not under floor 2. Whoops. Put it under walls full, and grab all of this and bring it into here. Bam. And we're keeping it extra super duper clean. So now we're going to continue on. And that means I'm actually going to want to grab a couple of things from in here and also from in the octagon and keep duplicating them. And I'm just going to work a little bit longer and do one more piece of this grid out to demonstrate the last and probably most complicated element of this setup. And then I'll let you go on your merry... Well, and then I'll demo the floors real quick, and then I'll let you go on your merry way. So this is out here like that. Let's just work a little bit more on all this. So duplicate this guy, bring him over here, put him up there, along with one of these spacers there. And that's by 90. And then the next one. Oh, that is, yeah, there we go. That's wall, spacer, wall. And then the next one is going to be a door. So duplicating that one, bringing it over here. And remember, the wall is one spacer and the door is one spacer and one wall. So the door can be directly adjacent to 2 different walls, or to 1 wall and 1 spacer. And the spacer it's going to be directly adjacent to is going to be a V spacer. Sometimes it's easier to do that. There we go. This guy's got his collider on him. This one's got his. Can duplicate that. Just like that. Duplicate both of these over here. And then say grab this and this. No, not that. And that. Duplicate those. Move them up here. Yeah, sometimes it needs a little bit of work. There we go. Yeah, and that happens when you don't have one parented to the other. So I could parent one to the other, but at this point it's too much work. So I'm going to avoid it. And you can see it really starts coming along. It just takes like a little bit of practice, a little bit of focus. And then you start. Remember, spacer, wall, spacer. And then you really start going, and you can see I'm basically sketching out this shape right here. And it goes pretty fast. You can like put on a podcast or an album or whatever you like to listen to and keep going. The last thing I'm going to show you is the hub system, as soon as I'm done with another bite of coffee and biscotti. Now, the hub is for junctions like this one, where you've got a lot going on, really irritating to deal with, and it'd be a lot easier if you could just not have to put up with any of it. So first thing, let's make one more empty object. Zero it out. And call it West 2nd. We'll come up with official names for all of these wings eventually, but right now, this'll do. So we're gonna parent everything under this, just to make things easier, and then we're gonna bring the West 2nd wing under here, right? So we got that one, we got that one, we got that one. Now we're gonna deal with the octagon. This spacer has children, but I need to delete it, so instead I'm going to unparent it by dragging all of the children outside of the spacer. Outside of the spacer. There we go. So I'm going to delete that one. I'm also going to delete these two. And instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one cardinal hub. Actually, I want the second version of the cardinal hub. Yeah, cardinal hub 2. And you can see it's a little bit more polished. Same deal. When you put a new mesh in, you gotta do all of the different steps and bring it into here. And that's a wall, so it needs a spacer before it. And I'm also gonna grab ordinal hub 2. Same deal. Bring it in here. This one needs to be rotated by 90 degrees. And I need to put its collider on it and snap it to the grid. Oops. And these are the hub pieces. And now I'm going to recreate this shape with a little circle right here, a little hub. So I'm going to duplicate this one, rotate it by 180, and I'm going to duplicate this one and rotate it back to 0. And then I'm going to grab little hub spacers, and I'm going to smack them in here. And once again, bringing them in here, adding their little mesh collider, convex, and snapping them to the grid, bringing them up here. And I'm just going to put this guy right here and keep duplicating him. So I call him -45. Grab both of these. Well, let's parent one to the other. Where's the other spacer hub? It's way up there. Let's parent one to the other just to make things easier so I can grab both of them at once, duplicate, and then say 180. Yeah, just like that. Now we got this little hub. It's made up of all of these different wall pieces, and they all line up and mesh together perfectly. I don't even think there's any conflicts like there were with those hybrid wall pieces. And that's where they're hybrid pieces. They're hybrid between a hub and a wall. Yeah, so that's how I get that shape. And it's really easy to deal with eventually. So then you can see next step is I need a T right here with a door right here. And oh, that's actually not going to work. Yeah, because it's cardinal. Yeah, so I need to revise this sketch. There are certain other rules that you need to just keep the pieces in mind when you're sketching stuff out like this. So say instead I did the door piece like that, that would work just fine. Because, oh no it wouldn't, because then I'd need a hub here. So there's limits on how tight you can get, especially, no I wouldn't, because it's an ordinal. Yeah, but ordinal wall pieces need ordinal hubs, and then, yeah, so it still wouldn't work. Same with here. So there are always limits as to what you can do, how tight you can get. There's going to be basically a never-ending trade-off between how much work we want to do and how tight and intricate we want our levels to be. And this is the current balance that we've struck with these specific pieces. And this is how you use them. Last thing, I'm going to go over the floors real quick. The floors are a lot simpler. So close the octagon down. Close the walls down. Let's go to the floor real quick. First of all, floors do not need colliders on them because our character is not affected by gravity. We're basically working on one floor the entire game. And the character doesn't need gravity endlessly hitting them. It's going to really cut down on the general weight of the game as it's running, which is going to be intense. It's going to be a lot because we're using HDRP. So I'm going to grab our floor tile right here. No. And snap it to the grid. Bring it in here. And I'm going to grab our floor tile half. It's the diagonal one. This is how we work with the ordinal directions. Bring it in here, snap it to the grid, and then they should just, oh, that's curious. Oh, right, yeah. No, these are the wrong ones. If I remember which floor tiles actually worked. Like I said, some of these are defunct in here, so we're gonna get rid of them eventually. Yeah, these are the ones. Snap it, bring it in, bring it up. And then with the diagonal one also, bring it in, bring it up. And then these line up together pretty well. And then we can start getting these working with the rest of the level. And so what I like to do with these is I generally like to make bigger floor pieces and then like start kind of parenting them, duplicating those parents and then snapping them together. So let's start with a diagonal piece. Each ordinal wall needs 3 of these diagonal floor pieces to, that's correct, yeah, to its base. And then I'm gonna bring this in here, like that, like that, like that, and then I'm also gonna bring one over here. And I'm going to take, which one? Yeah, so gonna take all of these, parent them to this. Now I've got this piece that I can continue to duplicate snap, and place everywhere. And don't forget rotate. I can also rotate it by 180, get it right there. Rotate it by 90, negative 90, to get it right there. And this is really good for like, and then I can duplicate that one, place it right there, place it right there. And then let's deal with the cardinal directions. So I've got this guy who is not parented to anything. Duplicate him again. You can see they're all lining up properly. Let's duplicate these guys, and again. And then grab all of these and parent them under this one. Now I've got this. So, moving this along, can just keep duplicating and moving, duplicating and moving. And then I can start duplicating multiple tiles. And eventually I can start parenting multiple tiles to just save myself even more time. Whoops. Even more time in the long run. But for right now, and for this size of the level, I don't think that's going to be very necessary. And the reason that we've got these kind of small like this is to deal with kind of edge cases like this. Right? So I'm going to delete that, duplicate that, and just move it over here. That's still in the same parent, I believe. Yeah. So we just got that little weird one. But for now, say we duplicate that, and then we want to grab this weird little one that we made, move it over here, and rotate it back to 0, -1, and then say 90. There we go. Now we've got that surface covered like that. Now we got this whole area covered. And you can see how the floor kind of gets to be a bit of a mess. But then we can say new empty object, 0 it out, and we can call this westmost wing floor, and grab all of these and parent that under this, and then we can bring that under floor 3. Oh, except I don't want these in the westmost wing floor, so I can just grab them, move them back out. Same with, say we duplicate one of those, move it back out, and then move it over here. And I can start duplicating this one and filling up the octagon. And then I'd make another empty, call it octagon floor, and before you know it, I've got perfectly organized, perfectly lined up floors and walls, all for the entire level. Now, I know this has been kind of a long one. It's a little bit complicated. There's a ton of rules, but these are the basics, which is that you need to be working on a grid when you're sketching out the level. You need to be continually referring back to your grid to make sure you've got everything precise and lined up. You need to be using the tiles how they're properly meant to be used, otherwise you're going to get weird little edge cases and places where the walls don't line up. So that is no two walls next to each other. You need walls divided by a spacer. There are certain edge case wall types, like the hubs, or like the hybrids and the hubs that you use for these tighter corners. The cardinal walls take up a wall and a spacer, and the floors, the floors are basically made up of a third of the smallest unit tiles. So the smallest unit that you can possibly make with these pieces, which is like kind of a little box that kind of looks like this, each of the floors is a third of that. So 3 floor pieces go to a cardinal wall, and 2 diagonal floor pieces go to an ordinal wall, right? No, 3 diagonal floor pieces go to an ordinal wall, excuse me. And then with all of this, it is going to take some practice, but eventually you should be able to just take a couple of hours and block out a pretty complex level that you can then start running around in, play testing how it feels. And then in the future, when we get these pieces UV'd, when we start developing things like textures for them, wall details for them, and props for them, it should be just as easy to replace the components in our blockouts with those official pieces, and then start playtesting not just how the level feels to move around in with our current character size and current sprint speed, current prop size, all of that, but also we can start testing out how the atmosphere is like. We can start lighting. We can start making sure that the other methods of polish we're developing, like the parallax isometric background, like the cards for the atmospheric effects, we can start making sure that all of it looks good together. But it begins with this. It begins with how you want to block out the level, how you want to design the level, and how you can use the modular pieces that we've made to do so. So I hope this has been helpful. I really look forward to us kind of all doing a little bit of level experimentation and design, and running around with the systems that we've made, testing them, putting doors in these door holes. Starting to turn this into a game that's enjoyable and fun to move around in. Thank you so much for watching.